This is John for Global Women's Sports Radio. Tonight, I have the pleasure of being on the beat with good friend, author, writer, John Cosper.
Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine.
Man, you are doing fine. You got a lot of stuff on the table.
It just see everything kind of hit all at once. I've been waiting on a lot of little things just to finish up multiple projects, and they all kind of hit at once. And then on top of that, Mike Rogers had his third book come ready about the same time. So, as of right now, Eat Sleep Wrestle's got 4 brand new releases going into summer. Two brand new releases and two re-releases. One's a new edition, and one is a repackaging of 2 smaller projects into one bigger one.
Well, let's start with Mars Bennett.
Absolutely. Mars Bennett. She's another one of those ladies from the 1950s that she had caught my eye when I was working on the Elvira Snodgrass book a couple of years ago. It's one project leads to another. I've been discovered Elvira when I was writing on Bluegrass Brawlers, and learned a little bit more about her writing the Louisville's Greatest Show book, and had to go back and do her biography. And Mars Bennett, so back in the 40s, one of the popular places for people to see the lady wrestlers other than the ring was in some of the cheesecake pinup magazines of the time. And I picked 1 or 2 of those up that had some photos of Elvira, and one of them had a photo of Mars Bennett, like 1 page over. Not part of the wrestling pictorial with Mars and Ann Laverne and a couple of other ladies, but just on her own as a strong woman, lifting your boxing trainer Lou Leonard over her shoulders in a fire ants carry. But yeah, I caught the name because Elvira had wrestled her in her last couple of years. You know, she was out of it in 52 and Mars started in 50. So she was a former circus performer, and she appeared in a lot of those magazines. It's a different type of magazine than kind of what it became after Hugh Hefner came along. But it was, a lot of girls in bikinis and a lot of girls. Mars in particular was a popular one where they liked to see the girls with the muscles, and a lot of photos of her, hanging on the rings and doing acrobatics and doing boxing and doing wrestling and everything. She trains at George Bothner's gym in New York, and that's kind of where she caught the eye of the photographers up there. And this was after being in the circus for a couple of years. She worked for Clyde Beatty. She worked for Ringling Brothers. She did animal acts. She worked the trapeze and some of the webs and some of the other high flying acts and everything. And then she moved into pro wrestling in 1950 and became a big star. Very popular, was a good draw just about everywhere she was. And sadly, her life came to an end in 1957 due to a car accident. But she was just, again, you write some books because, everybody wants to hear their story. You want some books because you were a big fan, and you write some books just because I want to know the story. And thanks to Chris Bergstrom, who runs the Fabulous Ladies of Wrestling Facebook page, I was able to get in touch with not only Mars's niece, who has a lot of her photos and a lot of different things from her life. We're talking hundreds of photos. I probably sorted through 400 pictures to prepare down to the 70 that are in the book. But also got in touch with a lady named Mars Bell Drummond, who her mother was Belle Drummond, the wrestler, who was Mars's best friend and also Mars's partner. The two of them were in a relationship for the last couple of years of Mars's life, and owned a home together, owned a car together, did a lot of traveling together, and had a lot of adventures. And Mars Bell had a lot of great stories about her mom and a lot of great photos as well. So it was really awesome to be able to get that side of the story, be able to kind of dip into the circus life a little bit. There's some really great circus stories in the book. And then a lot of photos. There's, like I said, there's over 70 photos in the book. A lot of these are personal photos, some of them from the magazine spreads and some from the wrestling days as well.
Are you able to get a lot of I don't know if stats is the right word, but are you able to get a lot of the records of her matches and like titles and stuff?
There's wrestlingdata.com is kind of an ever-growing collection of just, matches and shows and records and everything. I found it to be at least 80% accurate on the projects I've worked on. Occasionally you'll come across something this is wildly off base, but with Jim Mitchell in particular, who wrestles the Black Panther, there were some oddities sticking out here and there. Not only guys who worked under the same name, Black Panther, but also after he had the run-in with Gorgeous George in 1945, people pretending that they're booking the Black Panther Jim Mitchell when it actually wasn't, just to try to sell some tickets. But they do a fairly good job of posting those records and everything. And really, for me, it's actually kind of kind of forms the backbone of these old historical books. I'm able to kind of take that and go year by year and track where these ladies were. I use newspapers.com to go through the archives and look for the matches. And, I would say about 70-80% of what's on wrestlingdata.com, you can find in the newspaper archives. It's, there are some areas that still don't have their archives completely online. So there's some places you have to dig a little deeper or go look in other sources to get some more information. But the long and short of it is, you can go out there at wrestlingdata.com and they'll give you the wins and losses as they have them tallied and year by year, the different matches they were in and what their records were.
All right, so so you said you had 4 coming out. Mm-hmm. That was 1. Throw out the next one.
Okay, let's talk about Mike Rogers. Mike Rogers, I met 2019, so about 3 years ago. I met him at Cauliflower Alley Club, and he was given the Jim Melby Pro Wrestling Historian Award. To that point, he had not written a book. He had not published a book. He had written Voices of the Pacific Northwest. He'd done a lot of interviews with guys who'd worked in the Portland area for years and years. I mean, going back to the 80s, and he dug through all the old newspaper archives and everything, and really kind of chronicled the history of that particular area. But it was about middle of last year he reached out to me. He was interested in starting to publish some things, and we've got 2 volumes of his interviews out now called Excitement in the Air, volumes 1 and 2. And just read today they're working on volume 3. It'll probably be out by the end of the summer, also through Eat Sleep Wrestle. But he just put one out called Katie Bar the Door, and it is a history of Portland wrestling going back, I believe it starts in 1961. This is the territory that Princess Victoria came out of. Roddy Piper had a big role in that area. Buddy Rose, Dutch Savage. If you're interested in a really good, really authoritative look at the Portland, the Pacific Northwest territory, if you just like pro wrestling history, you're going to love this book. I mean, Mike's an awesome guy. Mike there's nobody who knows that area and knows that history better than Mike. And I'll tell you, that book is sold like gangbusters. It's probably the biggest, out of the gate sales I've ever seen on Amazon. Wow. So real excited for Mike, real happy to be representing him out in the marketplace. And, again, Katie Bar the Door is the name of the book. It's available on Amazon, and I've got them in stock now at eatsleepwrestle.com. If they go like they do on Amazon, I'm not going to have them for very long. I only ordered 4 copies, so I may have to reorder soon, but.
Well, I'm a big fan of Roddy, so I'll be picking that book up.
Absolutely, yeah. Anything that's got Roddy stories, it's like, I'm all in. So there's actually a project I may be jumping on. Not a name I want to drop just yet, but Roddy would be heavily involved, and that for me, that's a yes as well. So there's Piper stories, absolutely.
Exactly. All right, so we got 2 in. What's the next one, sir?
All right, let's go with some fiction. And this is wrestling related fiction this time. If you like the Dead Park Plaza books that I've got out, then I've got a book called It is The Darkest Side of the Ring. And it is a compilation of 2 short novels, one featuring Miss Charlie Cruel and one featuring Ella. And 2 ladies who were very familiar, I'm sure, to girl fight wrestling fans, to women's wrestling fans in the Midwest. I've known Charlie for years and years. And she actually came to me and said, would you be interested in writing a book about me and my character? And at the time, she was doing kind of a psycho killer. This is before the Pop-Tarts. So what we did, Charlie Cruel Escape from VHS Hell is she is essentially the star of an old, 1980s style, slasher horror film, revenge picture. I Spit in Your Grave was kind of the model for the movie that she was in. But these teenagers, they get a VCR that turns out to be haunted, and any movie they pop in, the evil characters come to life. So they pop the Charlie Cruel movie in, so she will come to life and she'll kill all the bad guys. And then the Ella book actually was an idea I'd had percolating for a number of years. I sort of pitched it to Charlie, and it didn't quite fit what she wanted to do. So I took it to Ella, and Ella loved it. But it's more of a ghost story, and it's about a guy who meets this girl late one night. He's an aspiring wrestler, and she's very much obsessed with wrestling and becomes very obsessed with him. And people around him start dying left and right in rather gruesome ways. So both of them kind of serial killer stories, but a little bit of supernatural, a lot of supernatural actually, a lot of hacking and slashing, and some wrestling tie-ins. So again, if you like horror, if you're an indie fan, this is a good way to support those 2 ladies, and also just to enjoy just kind of a fun read.
So is the Charlie part of the book, is that the same as the previous one, or is this?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is.
This
Okay.
is this is like I said, this is a re-release. It's just repackaging the two of them into one volume. So um yeah.
But the Ella one, was that an older one?
That was that came out right around the same time as Charlie's. I had both of them at the same time. The ladies had sold them on their tables for quite a while, and they did pretty well with them. Again, Charlie's kind of moved away from that serial killer character. Ella took some time off, had a baby. She's back in the ring. She's still got that hellacious scream, which is such a wonderful part of her character. But I just decided to kind of rebundle them. I've got a brand new cover on it, and put both of the ladies' stories into one volume. Just as kind of another fun thing, not only for the wrestling fans, but also the horror fans as well.
No, I just don't know how I missed that one, because that would be right up my alley, because I love
Yeah.
I love the Charlie Cruel book. Fantastic. It was a great read. I've since been following Charlie's career.
Mhm.
I've yet to see her in person, but that's on my bucket list at some point.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
man,
Oh, she's worth going to see. And she's just, I mean, one of the sweetest. I mean, nobody has more heart and more love for the business than Charlie. She's just wonderful.
yeah, and talent in the ring, quite a character. I mean, like you
Mhm.
said, she had the kind of the psycho character before. Now she has the Pop Tart character.
I
Very
don't trust it. I think that psycho's still underneath there. So
behind those Pop Tarts, is a killer. All
yeah.
right, so what's the fourth?
Fourth one is actually it's my first book. It's a brand new edition of Bluegrass Brawlers. This is the story of pro wrestling in Louisville, and it starts all the way back. Actually 3 years earlier than the previous edition, 1877, and goes all the way up through present day, and the sale of OVW, Al Snow taking over, and COVID. How the COVID pandemic affected wrestling in Louisville, and how Louisville's kind of coming out of it with OVW, with the indie wrestling, with what's going on with IWA Mid South. There were a lot of time gaps that I had missed with the first book, and that was partly because of the constraints that I was under. I work a full-time job. I can't spend 40 hours a week for a couple of months in the Louisville library scrolling through the microfilms as badly as I wanted to, and I'm not exaggerating.
No, it was fun, man.
Yeah, I love
I'd be
that.
all over that.
But a couple of years later, I was able to do Louisville's Greatest Show because that whole Courier Journal archive was now online. It was fully searchable. It's the same resource that I've used with Mars's book and Elvira's and Lord Leslie Carlton's and Jim Mitchell's. So I was able, starting in the fall, I went all the way back to 1900, collected every Louisville wrestling result all the way up through 1967, when it went dark for 3 years, and then Memphis took over in 70. So some of the gaps in the original story timeline, there's some new stories in the 1800s, again, kind of talking about 1877, a couple years before the intergender match with Ida Alb when the Four Paws Circus came to town in 1880. Some new details about guys like Duncan C. Ross and some of the other guys that wrestled in the 1880s in Louisville. We get into the 1900s. There's a number of new stories in the early days. I found a African-American wrestler that predates Jim Mitchell, a story in 1904. It was not anybody who wrestled, traveled or anything like that. It was just a guy known about town as a tough wrestler, and actually kind of a tragic story. What happened to him? He was known for being undefeated, and basically it would just pick up, like, I guess you could call it like a pickup basketball game, a pickup wrestling match in bars. And guy came in and challenged him one afternoon in the middle of July in a bar to a wrestling match, and Steve Calloway stepped up. He wrestled the guy. Everybody placed bets. Steve pinned the guy, and as they were celebrating, he fell over and died. So yeah, again, just kind of a sad ending, but an interesting story. I would have loved to have found out more about this guy. But he's one character that kind of came to life in this new edition. I kind of worked all the way up through World War I and the original version, then jumped all the way to 1935 when Haywood Allen, started up the Allen Athletic Club. Skipped over a whole swath of stories about the Savoy Theater and the Gaiety Theater, which were literally right down the street from each other on Market Street. They both had wrestling going on. They had a long-standing rivalry. A lot of interesting shenanigans with Abe Finberg and his battles with the state over indecency. He was the burlesque theater, and the other one was more the vaudeville theater. A lot of interesting commentary on the kind of productions that were allowed to go on, the ones that weren't allowed to go on. And it really wasn't so much about decency as it was who the important people and the politicians, which theaters they were frequenting, as to who got to stay open and who didn't. Kind of trace the origins of the regulation of wrestling in the state of Kentucky, There was a group called the Kentucky State Board of Athletic Control. Wonderfully ominous name for the predecessors to the people who have made life hell for Kentucky promoters ever since. But talking about how they were first created to regulate boxing. There were no restrictions on wrestling at the time. They were not given jurisdiction over that because wrestling was much more of a fledgling market. But as wrestling started to make more money, the State Board of Control tried to grab a little bit of power. The promoters took them to court, challenged them, and actually the Savoy Theater and C.J. Blake and Haywood Allen actually kind of ran outlaw against the state for a while they had an injunction because a judge had ruled the athletic board had no control over wrestling. And it's kind of a funny story to watch as this athletic board of control, they're trying to find anybody anybody with a pulse that has any interest whatsoever to run opposition to the Savoy, and they couldn't do it. Nobody could they're bringing in heavyweight wrestlers. They're putting them in the armory. Nobody's going to the shows. They want to go watch Blacksmith Pentago. They want to go watch Billy Love. They're all down at the Savoy Theater. So that was a fun trail to kind of go down. There's a number of new stories about the Allen Athletic Club. It's stuff that I covered in Louisville's Greatest Show. Kind of expanded on those years and those stories, talking about when they got into television, and Gorgeous George coming to town, things like that. After the Allen Club folded in 57, after the passing of Francis McDonough, we get into the era when Wee Willie Davis was in town. There's more stories about him, more stories about Dick the Bruiser. One that I was able to throw in because I just finished a biography on Wahoo McDaniel is on Wahoo's debut in the ring. Not necessarily his first time in the ring, but his first circuit was actually working up here for Jim Barnett, who was based out of Indianapolis at that time. And Wahoo McDaniel wrestled in Louisville, a couple of his first shows. He had never worked for Memphis and never would work in Louisville again. But in those early days when he was still playing football, he wrestled in Louisville quite a few times over at what became Louisville Gardens. And then moving into modern times, I did get to interview Jeff Van Camp, who was also Lord Humongous, one of the multiple Lord, not the most famous, who was obviously Sid Vicious, but Jeff Van Camp, another alma mater of New Albany High School, along with Rob Conway and Stu Gibson and myself. And just a really great guy. I got to talk to him about his wrestling career and him starting out with Dick the Bruiser as the football player, Jeff Van Camp, and then picking up the Lord Humongous gimmick. We talked a little bit about his friendship with Jake the Snake Roberts. His career after wrestling, he became a very important member of the law enforcement community and down in Florida. Really great guy, and really, really glad to have his story involved. And when we get into the OVW years, I went and got a ton more interviews this time around. It was got to talk to Doug Basham, got to talk to Nick Dinsmore, Rico Costantino, and then talked to a lot of folks too about kind of the transition that's happened after Al Snow took over. Got to talk to Al, Brian Kennison, Maria James, Ryan Howe, and of course, Billy Starks is mentioned as well. Billy Starks just starting out, kind of creating her history. She hasn't wrestled in Louisville yet because Kentucky state rules. You have to be 18 years old to wrestle in Kentucky. Wow. So if you want to watch Billy Starks wrestle, you got to go across the river. Matter of fact, 8 days from now, she'll be wrestling in Girl Fight, in Jeffersonville again. But we certainly do tell Billy's story. Billy's featured on the cover of the new edition, along with Lord Humongous, the Black Panther Jim Mitchell, and of course Louisville's favorite son, Jim Cornette. If you read the first book and you're thinking to yourself, do I really want to get the second one? I'll tell you, it's got about 50% more material, 50% more written material. Probably, I don't, maybe 50% new photos. There were some images and things I took out a lot of the ads and things like that I had included the last time, newspaper ads, and a lot more photos of wrestlers, a lot more photos of the people that kind of made Louisville wrestling and created the traditions here. So, again, Bluegrass Brawlers, I call it the 10th anniversary edition. It came out 8 years ago, but I started writing it 10 years ago. And hey, it's wrestling, it's kayfabe. So it's the 10th anniversary edition. I do have it available on my website. I do have it available on my website. It's available on Amazon. Real proud of it. Real excited to get it out there. It's a much more complete look at 145 years of wrestling in the city of Louisville.
And Al Snow, he's done a phenomenal job with it. I mean, I'm not real in tune to it, obviously. I'm over here, but everything I see, everybody I talk to, everything I hear, he's done wonders with that.
I saw the crowd that was there on Saturday night. I don't recall where they were on their summer tour, and there had to be 1,000, 1,200 people. at an outdoor show for pro wrestling in the state of Kentucky for an independent promotion. And they are a true independent promotion. I mean, you have the Al Snow Wrestling Academy that is at OVW. They still have the beginners class. They have the advanced class, which Doug Basham is actually, I think Doug's teaching the advanced class now. He's got Maria James is really building up that women's division, bringing in a lot of ladies from all over the place. Sierra's fantastic. Charlie Cruel's working for her. And Judy Ray Hendricks out of Eastern Kentucky. I know we've talked about her before. I think the world of that kid. They're all over there at OVW right now. They've got a really solid women's division growing. Like I said, they're building a territory. You know, they're going out on the road. They are expanding their reach all the time. I think I read the other day they're going to be on Netflix. They've got a Netflix distribution deal for OVW. Brian Kennison was telling me he's their TV play-by-play guy now. Brian gets fan mail from around the world. The OVW announcer gets fan mail from Europe, gets it from Asia. I mean, fans all over the world are tuning in to watch Ohio Valley Wrestling. You've got the young students that come here. You've got the young aspiring, I want to make it to AEW, WWE. And you got a crop of veterans in there. You could not ask for a better group of, senior leaders in that locker room. Guys like Cash Flow, guys like Isaiah, who are really setting the tone, for these young kids and really helping to shape them. And they'll tell you too, I interviewed Cash and I interviewed Isaiah for this book. That they will tell you, it's like, I have learned so much in the last couple of years from Al Snow. Guys who have been around for almost as long as Al has, and they will sing his praises about the things they've learned about psychology, and about working matches and how things are booked and how a show is run. It is, everything with him is a teachable moment. And everything is geared towards making the business better. It's not just about getting you over and helping you advance your career. It's about the big picture. Al, I know, is a big student of history. He loves to bring in, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I had brought in Princess Victoria for a girl fight show here in Southern Indiana. And shortly before that, Al had pulled out an old videotape of Princess Victoria in a match. I don't recall which match it was. But going through it and breaking it down, showing them, the wrestlers from 40, 50 years ago, even, and, doing tape studies and things like that. So, no, you're absolutely right. The things he's done with OVW, it was the right time for Danny to get out. Danny was ready to retire. And Al's been educating and teaching since almost shortly after he started wrestling, is what I learned. And he's a phenomenal teacher. He's a phenomenal promoter. What he's got going over at OVW is something special.
He's such a good guy too. I love Al. I think the world of Al. But you mentioned Girl Fight Wrestling. Anything big coming up on that show?
They've got a show July 14th. Billy Starks has been the champion for a year. She's issued an open challenge. They're not saying who she's wrestling. I will see Allie Katch is wrestling Charlie Cruel. Big Al, Alice Crowley, is making her return to Girl Fight after a couple of years. And she's got her hands full. She's facing Mickey Knuckles. Ooh. That's going to be a fun one to watch. So I will tell you, at the last show, Masha Slamovich and Mickey Knuckles, I always talk about when I see the rejects, John Wayne Murdoch and Reed Bentley, I've never seen them wrestle. I've only seen them fight. And Masha and Mickey had a fight, and it was glorious. I expect she and Alice are going to be, pretty much the same way. It's just going to be a brawl. It's going to be ugly. It's Mickey, so it's going to be entertaining. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any guesses on who Billy might be facing? Any?
I don't know. We were talking before we went on the air a couple weeks ago. I was in Ashland, Kentucky. I met another Bobby Blade student, Reese Ramon. Very sharp young lady, student of the history of the business, college student. I don't know how some of these kids do it, where they're doing full-time college, they're doing full-time activities in college. She's a majorette with the Marshall University marching band. Wow. And she's a pro wrestler. So I'm hoping in some capacity, I don't expect her to be challenging Billy. I'm hoping in some capacity we see her at Girl Fight at some point. I don't know who's bringing it. I'm kind of curious to see who it's going to be. We had a last minute switch on the last show because Kimberly had to back out. Billy wrestled a new girl from Indianapolis. I wish her name escapes me right now, but she did a heck of a job. Billy actually turned heel in front of the crowd and got everybody cheering for this girl. So, man, Billy's, yeah, we've said it before. She's a total package. She's going to sign someplace in the next year. She turns 18 in December. So, pretty much set your calendars. And honestly, if you want to see Billy for $5-10, this is the time to do it. It's going to cost you a whole lot more coming up in 2023 and beyond, because she's going to be someplace bigger. So, but she'll probably also be on television, right? But yeah, Girl Fight will be at the arena in Jeffersonville a week from Tuesday. It'll be Tuesday, June 14th. I'm planning on being there next week. I wasn't planning on bringing the books, but I've got all this new stuff, so I'll probably haul them all down there. And if you want to come pick up Bluegrass Brawlers, if you want to get, Darkest Side of the Ring, Charlie and Ella will both be there, so you can get them to sign the book for you. Certainly come on down and check it out. Girl Fight has never been a disappointment. There's always somebody new, somebody exciting. Oh, Sawyer X coming back. Sawyer Wreck is absolutely worth going to see. That's somebody else too. If you get a chance to see her local and you can see her for $10, go see her, because this girl's a star. Everything about her is just absolutely a star. And again, another just really genuinely nice person, somebody you root for and somebody you really want to see succeed in the business. And man, she just oozes superstar.
And there's also Pondo.
Of course, yeah.
Pondo's worth the price of admission right there.
But here's the thing, John, is Pondo as well as I do. Girl Fight's not about him. Girl Fight is about these girls, and that's he sacrifices and puts these girls over. And I think we talked after the last show, but Victoria was around Pondo for maybe 30 to 45 minutes, and she hadn't figured out. And she said, I will promote anything this man does for these girls, because he genuinely loves these girls. He's doing it for them. He's doing all the right things. He was listening to Pondo counsel one of the girls on some career advice and everything, some things she was trying to do to make more money, listening to what his thoughts were on it and how he was responding. And she was like, he really cares about these girls. And, you'll go to a you'll go to a Girl Fight show. You'll get to see Man Pondo. He'll cut a promo. He'll get in the ring and he'll promote the next show, but he's doing this for the girls. And he has been ever since, it was founded as a way to kind of help Crazy Mary Dobson, when they were together, to get her name out there and really to get her to network with some of the veteran girls. She was kind of shy about introducing herself. He brought in Jazz to work with her. He brought in Lufisto. And obviously it worked, it helped her to kind of, get more comfortable introducing herself and networking. And she made it all the way to the WWE. After they split, he really didn't want to do it. And then he got a phone call from Su Yung. And Su Yung said, Pondo, what you did for her, you're doing for us. And, you look at that roster, you look at the girls who've worked with them. They may have worked one show, they may have worked multiple shows, but Candice LeRae, Britt Baker, Jordan Grace, so many names that are with bigger promotions now and continuing to move up the ranks. And whenever somebody moves out, somebody else comes in, it's going to be interesting to see the next couple of years, which of these ladies makes that next step. And I would lay good, obviously Billy Starks is an odds on. She's going to be going someplace, but I think you're going to see Sawyer Wreck move on. I certainly think Ella has the potential. Pondo was giving Ari Alexander some of her earliest shots, and Ari's doing some phenomenal work right now over at OVW. So he's got a great eye for talent. And, again, when somebody moves on and they start working with somebody else, he's got somebody else that he finds and helps to bring along. And, they get to sit in the locker room with Mickey Knuckles and sometimes take their lumps from Mickey Knuckles and learn along the way. I think, speaking of that, I think Randy West is on the show next week too. So, Girl Fights, I love watching this promotion. I've loved watching, the ladies get their, use it as a launch pad to move on to bigger and better things. And just to get to watch the different combinations of wrestlers and Pondo's a great booker, the matchups are always so much fun to watch. And, he knows just who to put with who and to bring out the best in everybody.
No, totally. From working with him at Resistance Pro, I love the way his mind works. So people can go to Girl Fight Wrestling and see a great wrestling show. They can also pick up your books. But if they're not going to that show, tell everybody where they can find your books.
You can find my books at eatsleepwrestle.com. I've got all of my wrestling books are up there. The books I've published for other folks, including Mike Rogers, who we talked about, Chris Michaels, Jimmy Wheeler. If you're not familiar with my stuff, I wrote, the biographies of Chris Candido, Wahoo McDaniel. I co-wrote Princess Victoria's book. I co-wrote Tracy Smothers' book. Madman Pondo's book is up there as well. Got some historical biographies. Again, we mentioned Morris Bennett, Elvira Snodgrass, Black Panther Jim Mitchell, Lord Leslie Carlson. These may not be names you've heard of. These are fascinating stories. These are people who lived and breathed wrestling. I always tell the young wrestlers, and I give copies of a lot of these books away. Matter of fact, I gave Reese a copy of the Elvira book a few weeks ago. Go back and study these people, learn who they were, learn what they did. There's gimmicks and there's things that they did back in the day nobody's done. I came across a lady named Daisy May when I was working on Mars Bennett's book, and she was married to another one of the wrestlers and would occasionally work as his, I guess, as you would call it, a valet these days. In addition to being a singles wrestler, but she had this gimmick. She was the, would have looked like Ellie Mae Clampett sitting at ringside. She had the plaid shirt and the bare feet and everything, but she was really good at blowing bubbles. She would always be chewing bubble gum, and she could blow one as big as her head, and then she would pop it in the other guy's face.
Oh, God.
There's a gimmick for somebody right there. There's a gag for somebody to do. So, but anyways, back to the promotion. EatSleepWrestle.com is my website. My fiction stuff is up there as well too. If you're looking for paperbacks of something to read this summer, I've got some sci-fi, I've got some horror up there, and tons of wrestling stuff. I've got a couple stickers now available, some trading cards. So check that out at EatSleepWrestle.com. If you're looking for Girl Fight online, GirlFightWrestling.com. That actually goes to their Facebook page, and you can follow them there, and you can find out where their shows are going to be, taking place. I know they've got a few other things scheduled already for later on this summer. I don't remember which streaming service they're on, but you can send an email, and they'll let you know where you can find their shows online as well.
Well, John, you know that I've got a bunch of your books. Look out, because I'll be ordering a couple more this week.
Sounds good.
I encourage everybody to check out your books. I love them, man.
Thank you. I got 2 big boxes coming tomorrow. Bluegrass Brawlers and Mars Bennett are going to hit same day, and I got a lot of pre-orders I got to get. I'm going to have a late night tomorrow night, but that's okay. I'm here to do it.
It's all good stuff, my friend.
Exactly. Been waiting for this day for a while.
I encourage everyone to check you out at EatSleepWrestle.com. Check out the books. Like John said, even if you haven't heard of the wrestlers, they're excellent stories. They're fantastic stories. If you have heard of them, they're even better. Check them out. John, thank you very much for your time, and we'll catch up again.
Sounds good, John. It's my pleasure all the time.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.